Hey, everybody, and thanks for listening to Starting a Record Label. This podcast is about me starting a record label. Yep. Anyway, today I get to talk with music lawyer Ben Mclane. We talk about recording contracts, the good, the bad, and the ugly about those, and we talk about how content's kind of changing in the music industry. Ben's worked with Katy Perry, Glee, 311, Nine Inch Nails, and a ton more. If you go to our YouTube channel, we are doing all the podcasts on YouTube right now since we're recording this all through Zoom. And behind him, you just see all the gold records. It's pretty insane. Lawyers aren't usually on YouTube, and if they are, they're either like really stiff ones or they're like the funny ones. They're diagnosing movies and law stuff going on in movies. But Ben's actually got quite a bit going on YouTube, and I really enjoy a lot of the insights he has into the music industry. He's probably the person that I'll be going to when I need to get a contract written up. But until then, thank you. I want to thank you all for listening to this podcast and helping support us. Over the last few weeks, we've gotten quite a bit of bump, and I really happy about that. One of the major things you can do to help support us is to share the show on social media. That's actually really helps us grow the most, and it ensures we keep moving forward and making more of these. Tag the show, no matter where you're on Instagram, whatever else, we're all over the place. Starting a Record Label is the tag. Not Today Robot, tag them too so that we can get more artists interested in possibly signing with us. Finally, if you are one of those artists, please head over to nottodayrobot.com to send us your band's info. But without further ado, and I know we all say that a lot, Ben Mclane, how's it going over there while I'm at it?
Yeah, it's a nice day. I'm in the office. I've been staying at home and working since the whole shutdown started, but I come in once a week to my office just to get the mail. So Thursday's the day. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I can imagine you could probably do most of that stuff at home, right?
Well, you can, but the reason we've always had an office is because people wanted to come in for meetings, so we haven't had a meeting here in 2 months. I don't know if that's going to change considerably when things kind of ease up a little bit, but we'll see,
Yeah. The other day they were talking about things not easing up, and then all of a sudden I see news things like, oh, they're easing up, and I'm like, okay.
Well, they are, and it's just I don't know how people are going to react as far as wanting to be around other people, if they're strangers especially, because a lot of times with people, well, it's just like you, I'm talking to you now over the internet. Most people I work for, I don't even ever meet, really. It's just phone, email, or video conference, or they might be in Europe or whatever, but local people still want to come in sometimes and meet.
Yeah, I'm a mixer and engineer, and I haven't had a call for like 2 months. So,
but when do you think it's going to be? Do you think people want to start coming in and doing like face-to-face kind of productions again soon?
I think they will once it kind of eases up. I think here, California, we're a little touchier, but obviously across the nation, people are opening up or whatever. I don't know how smart that is or not, but
are you able to do what you need to do remotely for the most part?
I can mix at home all the time. Yeah. Okay. So I've actually done a few mixes, but there's nobody recording a lot. So
yeah.
Oh well.
Well, I think the labels had a lot of stuff. The releases really haven't slowed down, so they must have had a lot of records that were in the pipeline, ready to go.
Yeah. Actually, I had a friend, songwriter. He was in the White Tie Affair. They were signed to Epic for a while, and I was like, I think I did a podcast a couple times ago, and the lead singer is one of my best friends from high school, and I was like, has it slowed down a little bit? And he's like, actually, there's a lot more for songwriting right now. It's kind of weird.
If you're a writer, I think because they want to make sure. There's a lot of artists that don't write their own stuff, or they do it as collaborations. So I think they want to have as much material ready to go when everybody's ready to record again, so the hits are ready. Yeah, because I think there's obviously been somewhat of a slowdown, but I see it more in like the film and the TV business, really, because it's harder to make those kind of productions remotely than it is a track or something,
Yeah, I'm a comic nerd, so watching all these things I've been super excited for slow down. I'm like, no.
Then no Comic-Con.
Exactly. No WonderCon, no Comic-Con, no comic book movies. It's
Have you ever been to Comic-Con? We could never get into Comic-Con.
Yes. Okay. I got into Comic-Con probably 2 years after the first Avengers movie. So that was almost 10 years ago.
Was it just the traditional way you just signed up on the internet? Because you either do it that way or you have some kind of or you're connected to somebody that's there, but we've never been able to get into it.
Yeah, you either could be listed as like, I'm sure it's with everybody on the internet now wanting to be a blogger and everything else, it's harder to get into the press way. But there is ways to get in there, but it's really hard. You got to sit in like a waiting room. You got to make sure you got other friends doing it at the same time. It's kind of annoying. At being there, I don't like going there anymore because it's insane. It turned into Pop Culture Con, so it was kind of, when Glee was there, it was kind of like, what? Why is Glee here?
Yeah, well, it's just like K-Rock, the rock station. Yeah, you're out here, right? I was just reading, they just had a lot of changes in their staffing, and now they're playing like Ariana Grande and Post Malone. They never would have done that because the new program director is like, hey, we have to bring in some modern music here, Yeah,
I imagine radio's kind of suffering. But oh well. You're right. Like terrestrial is definitely, and I guess Sirius XM, I was reading, is not doing as well because people aren't in their cars as much. Yeah. Did you see the Joe Rogan thing? He's signed with Spotify.
Yeah.
That's
he has a pop for his podcast, right?
Yeah, for his podcast, but they're pushing so much for podcasts on Spotify, but they signed him kind of a little bit similar to when they had Stern on XM.
Yeah, well, I heard it was for like what, $100 million or some crazy number like that. I mean, I guess he has a huge audience. I don't know. I'm not really a podcast guy, but he obviously is one of the top guys to get a deal like that.
He is the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, that's one of, like you were talking about, income streams an artist could maybe tap into. Obviously, you can start your own podcast, but if you don't have a lot of people viewing it, there's really not much money that's going to make off that. But look what he did.
It's pretty impressive. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure we could probably even use a little bit of that from earlier. But I was just going to, for you and for everybody listening who might be tuning in the first time, this is a podcast about kind of me just journaling my walk to trying to start a record label. And I'm having all different kinds of people on. I've had different, actual record labels on. I had an accountant on, songwriters on. Just asking music people in the industry, especially since we've got a slowdown right now and I can't do a lot. So just talking to people in the music industry. So I wanted to ask, what necessarily is a music attorney, and why are they different from a traditional attorney?
I call myself an entertainment attorney these days because it's really media. Music kind of overlaps with video and film and television and fashion and all those kind of things. But I think somebody that focuses on music primarily, like we do, I mean, you're just dealing with the contracts that relate to the music business: record deals, publishing deals, management deals, agency deals. Anything that has to do with YouTube and all these other things, they're all kind of connected to music now. It's big, so somebody that focuses on that, I think, because otherwise if somebody's like a bankruptcy attorney that maybe does a little bit of music on the side, well, they're probably not an expert in it because they don't focus on it. So I mean, I've spent many years just learning the music business and kind of focusing on that, but then things sort of evolve and kind of are connected to it, and so you have to become an expert on those things too, that are media related. But I think most music attorneys also don't go into court. They're not suing. They're not like litigators. Usually they're more like what you call a transactional attorney, which deals with contracts primarily. That's kind of, that's how I would describe it anyway. So, but you'd want somebody that kind of has expertise in music if you're going to hire a music attorney, not that just says
you don't necessarily
they do it.
Want your uncle.
Yeah, well, not just somebody that just says they do it in a whole laundry list of other things that they do. Like, well, I'm a divorce attorney, I'm a criminal attorney, I'm a music attorney. Well, you can't be an expert in all those things, I don't think.
That's true. So, what kind of contracts do you generally deal with then? Like, just to give regular people understanding.
A lot of producer deals. There's tons of producer writers out there. Cutting tracks, developing artists, that you need a piece of paper every time you're working with somebody. If you're a writer, producer, mixer, there's rights involved, there's money involved. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of management agreements. There's a lot of managers out there that want to work with new artists, which is great. Of course, there's not a lot of money in that when you're working with a new artist at first, unless they blow up. But these days there's the potential to blow up and go viral with one song. It happens, like Old Town Road or something like that. That became the biggest song ever at number one, and it was just the guy's first song, you know, and it broke off TikTok. Yeah, it broke off TikTok. So, I mean, and record deals, publishing deals. I've actually been doing a lot of record deals recently, even in this whole COVID thing, but more smaller, more independent kind of things. I mean, I think the majors still sign, but they don't sign as much, you know, because those are usually much bigger deals, and there's a lot more involved with that. You know, if you're investing a couple $100,000 in an artist, they're a little more selective and picky. But a lot of independent labels, by just, you know, the budgets are smaller, you know, it's not as much of a risk, but there's no shortage of labels, strangely enough, you know, so that's good.
Cool.
Is that you're saying you're starting a label yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
And so,
who do you pattern yourself after? What would be a similar kind of label that, like, you would want yours to be like?
My idea is, since I've done podcasting and I'm a producer engineer in general, I thought that, and I've done some YouTube and whatnot, I thought that I could try to roll it all into one. And I don't know, like, I know it's going to be really hard to figure it out eventually, and I don't know if maybe it's going to have to be some kind of deal that includes YouTube streaming, I'm sure, and other revenues. I want to have as many revenue channels as possible to support not only the artists but the label itself. Okay. And it's going to be a hard thing to do, I'm assuming.
Well, not necessarily. I think with a label, you just have to, if it's not just you have to sign the right talent.
Yes.
You know, that's a whole different conversation, and then how much talent, because you can only handle so much, I think.
At the beginning, I'm only going to do one, just to start. And obviously this podcast is kind of chronicling that process, looking at bands right now, but
so you're looking for a band. You're looking for a band. Okay.
I'm looking for more rock music. Mm-hmm. I feel like that industry's kind of dipped a little bit. Also, it's a little near and dear to my heart, even though I've been in like pop and rap forever, but
I'm glad. I like rock, you know. But labels aren't signing as much of it, and there's not as much radio, that's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like
it's a very touring dependent genre, you know, which right now kind of sucks. So
yeah, I started this podcast at the beginning of the year, and I was hoping to be out looking at artists by now. And so I'm like, now I'm just scouring like Bandcamp and things and seeing what kind of artists are doing social media, which surprisingly, a lot of them are getting back on the train. I normally talk about how they kind of suck at doing that, rock artists in particular. That's
been my experience too. But I think they've been forced into it. I mean, I certainly would recommend any client to get on social media, do live streaming, anything you can do to show that you're a real band, you know. And a lot of bands, like I noticed Goldfinger has been putting out a bunch of videos where they got all four guys and, you know, the split screen, but, you know, they did really some really cool videos. It's very energetic. It's like you're right there in the show, you know.
Yeah, Feldman did a really good job with all those videos, and he just keeps kind of putting them out. And then the other day, they had Tony Hawk talked about redoing the first two video games, which had huge impact on the music industry. Those video games with the soundtracks blew up those artists even bigger than what they were. So he got 1 billion, I don't know how many actually views, but because of that release, they went back to that Superman song that was on all that long time ago.
Oh wow, that I didn't even hear about that. That's great. I mean, you know, people are doing things and not just not doing things. So that's the key. I think you just have to find some way to keep your name and face out there. Yeah,
truth. So let me get back here to see if dig into my questions here. How often? At what point should an artist or a label kind of get a contract drawn up? Do you do a lot of talking beforehand with the artist, and then at what point do they come in?
Well, I think anytime an artist is being offered some kind of exclusive type of an agreement certainly for a long period of time, and if there's some money changing hands and some rights changing hands, you should get something in writing. Something a little more formal than a napkin, you know. So it's just too important. So, and I think most people, you know, most labels I know, most artists these days will at least consult with an attorney before they sign something. Not everybody, but, you know. And I don't think it's wise to try to draft up your own agreements necessarily. I mean, you can find things on the internet, but the problem with that is they're always incomplete. They're always incomplete, or people are like trying to jam things from different things. It just doesn't really fit sometimes. So I think in the long run, it's actually better to use a professional agreement, a professional lawyer over in the big picture. You might think you're saving some money or whatever, but I think a lot of times you cause more problems by trying to cut corners.
Do they poke holes pretty easily into those randomly mushed together in
They
their
can.
contracts?
Well, that's only if you ever get into a litigation situation, and that's the risk you run. If you have something vague in your agreement or ambiguous, or something important is left out, or it contradicts, it could be a big problem, if you ever have a dispute. But a lot of times it's up to a judge to figure that out if it's not black and white, which it usually isn't.
Yeah.
And that's a lawyer's job, to try to kind of make things as clear as possible, I think it's plain language. When I draft an agreement, I'm making it in plain English. I could make it real complicated, but there's no point in that. Make it so everybody can understand it.
Well, isn't that the point for kind of everyone to be on the same, plane, so that they know what everyone's expected of everyone, right?
I think so, but I think historically people were like, oh, this lawyer drafted that agreement and they couldn't understand what it said because it's like written like a Shakespearean book or something, and they were just like, well, the lawyer drafted it, it must say what it's supposed to say, we'll just sign it, but I that's not how we do it. And maybe that's old school, but if you look at some older agreements, sometimes from the 70s, 80s or whatever, they're, 100 pages long. I can't even understand it. But I think things are more simplified now.
How often do you run into bad ones today? Bad contracts?
All the time, because there's still people that try to, like I say, cut corners and think they can do it, and then they have an issue later, or a lot of people are just excited, young artists, really excited to sign something. They don't know if it's good or bad. They're just excited that somebody wants to work with them. So they'll just sign on the dotted line, and then later there's problems. And so I spent a lot of time trying to get people out of bad deals or trying to renegotiate bad deals, So yeah, that happens quite a bit.
Cool. What are some things that like artists or labels should look out for when, being involved with each other?
Well, I think it's always important. To me, you should always try to be fair to both sides. You could take advantage of somebody, I suppose, but I think in the end, that kind of blows up in your face. But you want to protect yourself. If you're a label, you want to sign the artist for as long as possible and get as much product from them. And probably keep as much of the income as you can. And make it exclusive so they can't make records for other people. If you're the artist, it's just the opposite. You want the shortest term possible. You want the biggest split of the money possible. And hopefully you have freedom to maybe do things with other people or have creative control, final say over your art, your images, the songs that are going to be put out, things like that. Not try to give away every income stream to a label, and a label is going to want to try to get a piece of as much as they can, because obviously streaming doesn't generate that much money necessarily, and CDs sales are kind of way down. So it's like a label is usually going to say, well, if we don't get a piece of merchandise, touring, publishing, branding, influence, whatever that is, ad revenue, we can't really support you. We can't promote you. It's not worth it.
So have contracts then kind of changed in the streaming era, like with TikTok and Twitch and YouTube? Do they now include some of those other revenue streams? Have you seen that?
Yeah, well, if it's kind of like what you said, a 360 deal, that would encompass any money an artist makes from their career. But a label has a legitimate argument if they're promoting the artist that might uptick their TikTok numbers, their YouTube numbers. More people know about them, so they go there. So if they're generating ad revenue or subscription revenue off that, why shouldn't the label get a slice of that? That's their argument. The artist is probably like, well, hey, hands off of that,
Yeah.
So let's try to, those things are negotiable sometimes, and that's all to be, a lot of times there wasn't that much money made off those platforms unless there was a huge buzz artist with lots of followers and people watching it, which happens, sometimes with TikTok now. Yeah, but that's a whole different, a lot of the TikTok, I guess more artists are getting on there, because I know bands in town just did a joint venture, something with Twitch. So, there's a lot of all these artists that can't tour are doing these live streams through Twitch. But, used to be you really weren't making any money off your live streams, so And then, the numbers had to be massive on YouTube before you see any ad revenue. And it seems like a lot of the TikTokers are still these teenagers doing these silly dances. So, because it's only like 15 seconds or something. So I'm not quite sure, it's almost like a novelty thing, So I mean, a lot of that's yet to be determined, I guess, but it's great exposure, no doubt about it, to be on this
my
platform.
daughter's friends all do TikToks. And so like, they're always got their still phones out or whatever, doing just hilarious songs. And
they can, and I guess an artist certainly could do that too, but it's just like it's like a little snippet, so it's really just to promote you or keep your name alive, I suppose. But if you're making money off that, that's a video. And, usually when you do a record deal, it says audio and video is controlled by the label and they get to monetize that. So that's considered a video. So I can see why they would probably expect a slice of that revenue.
There's been a lot of artists that have been blowing up from it too, which is crazy. Like someone, I can't remember who it was. Chris had talked about in a former podcast, an artist who made a song like 4 or 5 years ago. That song, just someone started using it and it blew up on TikTok. And now that artist is not going to blown up on TikTok. So that's kind of crazy.
It can, but I mean,
not the norm, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes there's these like 1 in a million kind of things versus is that how they're going to promote acts? Maybe. I mean, I think it's going to be part of the marketing scheme now to be on all those platforms.
Yeah.
As opposed to just radio and just touring or just what was considered MTV at one time, which I guess is YouTube now.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm kind of looking at doing is, I have all this, trying to jump into YouTube a few years ago. I have all this camera equipment, all this other things. And so I'm like, hey, I have a lot of knowledge about this situation. Let's try to produce some artists and get them doing a lot of video content and everything else. Let's see where they can kind of get in and see if that works.
Yeah, well, I mean,
rock especially.
If an artist isn't making video content, then I think they're probably not a real artist. I mean, these days that just should be second nature, and it is for some young artists. Mm-hmm. Some of these artists that have blown up on the internet, a lot of them through cover videos or whatever, but they were cranking it out. They're cranking out content. And even if you're a TikToker, you got to crank those little videos out like every day, to develop a big audience. I mean, so it's got to be somebody who's super devoted to committed.
Yeah, so one thing is, part of this talking through the podcast is like the first artist that I sign has to be 1,000,000% committed to this because it's going to be a lot of hard work, especially with video. A lot of the bands that I've worked with in the last 4 or 5 years, I've tried to get them like, hey, work on your social media, work on your YouTube, get involved in Facebook ads because it's really easy to target the people that you want to. I actually upped this podcast 260% last week after using Facebook ads for like, a week and a half. And it was only like $50 or $60. So
it's good. But how did you know who to target on that for the ads?
Just, what I did, there's a lot to go into, but partially what I did was you kind of find people that are similar that, for music, especially for me, different bands that I thought would be close to people that would want to be signed to me. And so I'd go through and put 5 or 6 different kinds of ads, also find different different videos, see what would work best. So you just test everything. You test it a bunch of times. And then eventually they even have settings inside of it that shows you what's the best out of your testing. So you're like, okay, well, this video does really well. People want to click on it. And people clicked on it, and then they clicked and listened to the podcast. And they actually subscribed too. So it's kind of crazy.
Okay. Well, that's great news, man. I hope that continues to go up.
Yeah, me too. I don't know where I was going at the beginning of that. But or just artists, like a lot of the bands that I worked with in the past, they'll release their music, whether it be on Spotify or YouTube. They'll do a whole record. They always want to do a giant record, and then they'll release it all, and then a year and a half, and they won't do anything, or they'll do sparse social media posts, and like, why am I not getting anywhere?
Yeah, it's different. Well, I grew up along in the days when bands would put out a record every 3 or 4 years, and then maybe they'd do a tour to support that, but then they'd go off for 2 years and make another record, and make another record. And there was no social media, so they just disappeared. But that was fine. Audiences kind of expected that, and there was always somebody else to fill the gap. And now audiences expect constant interaction from the artist. So it's harder to be an artist now, probably. You really have to be on it 24 hours a day. So, and I know a lot of artists are like, wow, I just want to make music. I didn't know I had to be a marketing guru, but it's great if you're on a label and the label helps you with that, or a manager helps you with that, which, by the way, if you're going to run a label, I suppose you have to be prepared to, jointly do a lot of that too,
Yeah.
because, but yeah, you certainly don't want to expect the artist to have you do it 100% or vice versa. It's kind of a partnership.
Yeah. The only thing I'm concerned about, because obviously I'm going to have to take a lot of management roles or whatever as well, a lot of different hats for this, especially at the beginning. The only thing I'm concerned about is I know that there's the I can't personally book them shows, I think is a thing.
Then you wouldn't do that anyway. I wouldn't get into that world. That's no booking.
Yeah.
Artists can do that on their own, but things like helping them get exposure and promote them, that's partially your job as a label. I mean, that's the only reason you'd go with a label.
I think there's
a law that says you can't book shows if you're not a licensed talent agent. And that's true. So that mostly managers have issues with that. Because a lot of times if you're managing a new artist and the artist is young, they just assume the manager does all that for them. But you're not supposed to. And by the way, that's only in California. If you're in Kansas, you can do it. But if you're a manager and you're booking paid gigs for your artist, you can get a lot of trouble for that. So you shouldn't do it.
That's true. That's what I said. I was a little worried about that. Like, I don't need to step into this.
Yeah, but if you're a label, you normally wouldn't do that. And if some artist expects you to, that's an unrealistic expectation, because I don't know any labels that do that.
Yeah. So like in the age of Spotify, are labels actually getting bigger because of this, or smaller, or staying about the same? What do you think?
Well, the majors, the Warner, Sony, Universal, they're kind of staying the same size as they always have. Although a lot of times they've gotten where they are by absorbing other companies, absorbing smaller labels. But I don't know if the sizes are changing, but I'm noticing a lot of independent labels that are out there, especially in an international sense. There's labels coming from everywhere, South America, Europe. They're all competing in the U.S. marketplace too. And a lot of managers I know are starting labels because they don't want to, because everything's digital primarily. You don't necessarily need a big record company to help you with that anymore. You can release stuff yourself but you have to have some kind of internal system where you at least have some marketing campaign going on, social media. Somebody's got to administer and oversee that. Like I said before, the only advantage I see of a label is, or bigger label is, are they going to put money into your marketing? Because if you can't, if somebody's going to put $100,000 plus into marketing, hey, that's a lot of money. Most artists I know don't have that.
Yeah.
But you can do a lean and mean campaign like a lot of people do for hardly anything. It's just being smart about it.
Yeah, knowing where to spend the money at.
Yeah, knowing where to spend it and when to stop, and but I just think there's a lot of independent labels I'm seeing popping up. They're doing much more fair deals too. Maybe it's just singles or an EP or something. When you sign with a big label, they want to sign you up for 4 or 5 albums.
Yeah, I think especially with what I'm going to do, we're definitely going to focus more on singles. Obviously, with the social media aspect of it, I'm hoping that we can do some like writing live on YouTube and whatever else. Kind of have the audience help pick the songs, maybe record a song and produce it in video, even do video for the recording. Just all in one kind of package, and we're put like a song out a month. But just putting one song or maybe 2 a month. It just all depends. EPs, I feel like it's just too much, or albums even.
Yeah, well, it depends who you are as an artist. If you're Taylor Swift, people are going to expect an album eventually from you, but she's got the audience for it, and she actually has even physical stores will stock her product. Where if you're not a big name like that, there's nobody. You can't stock your CDs anywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And that's one thing. There's places like Amoeba, independent places, but they're shut down at the moment. I'm assuming they're coming back soon, but. I think a lot. I think
moving.
They are moving, yeah. But I think a lot of the tiny, because I work with a lot of indie rock bands, and they were selling a lot of vinyl on the road and in these independent record stores. But some of the tiny ones, if they're out of business for 2-3 months, I think they're out of business. That sucks.
Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen to the indie record labels. Wasn't Indie Record Day almost?
It was supposed to be in April. Yeah, I don't know if they postponed it. It was in April. I think they may have postponed it. Record Day. They may have postponed it.
That's one of their big things a year, and I just, I wonder how they're going to actually keep up. I know the big, like Amoeba is kind of a big place, but we've got little places all over.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm just hopeful that people are somehow going to be able to tough it out, and people will go back and support it. And maybe, but a lot of people have found ways to market things and sell things online, but it's not the same. When you go into a record store, or at least some of those, you kind of want the experience of like touching it or flipping through. And I don't know. It's sort of like when you talked about Comic-Con or whatever. It's just sort of a cultural thing. It's like being part of a tribe. You're a record collector,
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes you buy things online because that's the only place you can get them. But it's nice to be able to go into a store, I think.
Yeah, I think just having the product. I don't know. Personally, I have a million records. I don't listen to the half of them. So like, it's almost just having them to have them. Like, oh, this is a souvenir I have from this artist I really liked.
Oh man, I have so many records. I don't know what I'd do with them, but it's not like there's an aftermarket really for those so much, unless you have a super, super rare like Beatles record or something, Otherwise, it's just you're not going to get much for it.
You'd be surprised because I sold some cassettes the other day from Tooth and Nail Records, and well, they're probably not that hard to find. You can probably get them on eBay every once in a while. I just someone had brought up and was like, hey, I got these cassettes, and I'll buy them from you. Like, okay.
Did they buy them in bulk or one at a time?
No, they're one at a time.
Yeah. So you just did it, you just through your own eBay site, or where were you selling?
I just did it. I was on Facebook when I was talking to people in some group, and I mentioned I had them, and he was like, oh, sure. And I do see people selling stuff in different Facebook groups all the time.
Okay. I guess if you're really like super organized about it, but if you like went to Amoeba and they buy back product. Yeah. If you said, hey, I've got a box of 100 albums here from the 70s, they're like, yeah, here's $10.
Exactly. Like my wife's grandmother just passed, and before she passed, she drove over here and just dropped off all these records, and I'm like, oh no, what's in here? Like just stuff that no one would want to listen to.
Well, it's finding a place to put it's the problem,
Yeah. What do we got here? The Musical Machine, some kids album. I don't know.
Well, that one I've never even heard of, but it's a kid's record. So
yeah.
What's the label? Who put it out?
Candle?
It must just be a kid's label. I've never heard of it.
Maybe from way back when.
That may be a Christian label too.
I'm assuming it probably is. But a couple more questions before we take off. What are some revenue streams that you personally kind of are seeing artists taking advantage of that some other artists probably don't see?
Well, the main things you should tap into, which some people really don't, or you join BMI or ASCAP, so you can get your songwriter performance royalties. Because anytime your song's played on the radio or television or the internet, it's generating a performance. So you can, or even in videos or streaming, you can get paid for that. But you have to have your songs signed up with BMI or ASCAP. Listed. And so a lot of people don't do that, and then join Sound Exchange, which is, again, digital performance income, but for the master side, not for the songwriter side, for the performer, the singer, the band. There's actually a lot of money there that a lot of people never join Sound Exchange. But, it's digital royalties. So if you're getting played on podcasts and webcasts and Sirius XM satellite radio or Pandora or whatever, but it actually does, you'd be surprised, and there's things called neighboring rights, which is when your music is played in foreign territories, you have to join these neighboring rights organizations to collect it for you. A lot of people don't know about that. So, that's another income stream that you can take advantage of. And I think, you have to be, it depends on if there's a demand for it, but if you can make merchandise, you could sell merchandise, t-shirts, hats, whatever, that can be pretty lucrative. But, if you don't really have a following, I don't know. And you have to watch out how, they have these on-demand stores too, where you can just have the graphic there, and if somebody wants to stick it on a shirt, they pay for it. Maybe maybe it's not as nice of a quality shirt, but at least you don't have to worry about making a bunch of inventory that you don't know if you're going to sell it. Yeah, which is a problem, bands have when they go out on the road a lot of times. They're like, wow, how much merch should I take out? They don't know.
Yeah, I'd interviewed a guy named Cam from the Print Life. He has a print shop and he has a YouTube channel, and he's hilarious. But I'd asked him, hey, what about these like one-off places? Would you say a band that only needs 10 t-shirts for their first gig or something go through them? And he's like, oh, absolutely. He's like, you don't want to go through me for like something super small, and you can print them on they have different levels of t-shirts. It's like, you're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to make like a couple dollars maybe per t-shirt. You know, once you get up to that level selling them, you're going to definitely want to go to a print shop and get some, better.
So I guess, it depends where, but just to have a little bit at the beginning or test it out. It depends where you are in your career, but I think merchandise can be pretty lucrative. A lot of people don't take advantage of that, or they just have one black t-shirt for a guy or something. You should expand the line a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I was going to ask, what made you want to write a book?
Well, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. And with newer artists in particular, a lot of times the same issues, same things that I discuss in the book, the 10 most common, the music business and 10 easy lessons. So I tried to pick out 10 things that seem to come up over and over again with newer artists that I was talking about. Some of the things we touched on a little bit on this podcast, but, and so and just to get my name out there a little bit, it's nice to have a credit. It's not that hard to really do it's a self-published book, so it's not that hard to do that these days. You don't have to worry about trying to get it in Barnes and Noble, which is difficult, so it's and I'm hoping people, it's as you said, it's helpful to you. It's pretty simple. It's more like a handbook, really. And I tried to break it down into a real simple way, easy to read, but it's all important information. So I think if somebody buys that and reads it, I think they'll get a pretty good handle on the basics of the business, really. I mean, there's a lot of great books out there, don't get me wrong. So
it's not expensive, for one. For two, it's very straightforward. I read Passman's book a while ago, and that thing is so thick. It's crazy how much
it's getting thicker.
Exactly.
Because I have the first Passman book because I've known him since he put it out, but it's probably half the size of what it is now. But I mean, his book's great and it's more comprehensive, but mine's more simplified and broken down. So I'm not even trying to compete with Passman, but anyway, hopefully somebody finds some merit in my book, and that's what it's there for. And maybe I might do another. It could be a series of some sort. Maybe I'll do another one. I'm not quite sure what's coming next on that, but and it's straight. I put it out 2 years ago now. It seems like yesterday, but the good thing about having a book like that is, I mean, there may be some things in there that I tried to make it where things wouldn't really go out of be like dated. The concepts hopefully will stay the same.
There's definitely more concepts, and it helps. It's very straightforward, like I said, for artists generally, so that I know a lot of artists didn't quite understand how some of this stuff works, and it's very straightforward. So I really appreciate that. Just for that aspect, like you said, if you bought like Passman's book, it has everything in it, but you're going to get lost. Like, especially if you're an artist, you don't have any idea. So, what is it? Yeah. Music Business in 10 Easy Lessons by Ben Mclane. So, if anybody wants to check that out, it's on Amazon. So you can get it as a paperback, or you can get it as an ebook, a Kindle ebook too. So, I'll put a link in the description, everybody. Oh, cool. Yeah. And then if anybody else needs to reach me, I mean, I'm on the internet, but I have a website, which is benmclane.com. BENMCLANE.com. So pretty much everything else you need to know about me is there, and how to reach us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And anything else that you needed to ask that you did? Found you a while ago. Oh no, I found you a while ago, like on, I don't know if it was on YouTube or something. I came across some video you were in, and I was like, oh wow, it's actually like a attorney guy that actually is on YouTube. Like it's really weird that there's not somebody out there that really does a lot of that.
Yeah, well, I try to speak as many places. If somebody invites me, just like you,
good for you to be out there. I'd encourage you to do some more videos.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me to do this. I mean, if somebody invites me to do something, I'll usually show up. It's possible to maybe I might have some kind of video series in the future. It's just hard, just like you want to make sure you do it right and organized, and it's interesting to people. And I think a lot of times the law can get super boring, so it's almost like you probably need to bring guests on and stuff. Like, oh, I work with this artist, and they may want to drop in and talk about it, because I think just going over legality sometimes gets boring, and I'm not like a professional actor or anything, so
Sorry, neither am I. And I've done a lot of these. And definitely, if you don't have someone to talk to, it's real weird.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like, hey, today the topic is record contracts. And yes, I could go through it and probably give interesting information to an extent, but then I don't really know. I've found, it's just like, hey, if you're competing with the Kardashians, their numbers are out. It's like, it's hard to develop an audience just doing it like a normal way without some kind of like pizzazz or some kind of celebrity tie-in or something.
Very nice. Well, thanks so much for coming on, especially like I messaged you and you came on like real quick, like, oh, wow, I was expecting this to be like far in the future if this happened at all. But hey, I appreciate this, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad, like I said, on Thursdays, at least until things get back to normal, that's my office day. So that's the best place to do these kind of things. So I thought maybe you'd be available today. So thank you for filling me in, slotting me in.
Oh, no worries. I got nothing to do.
Okay. Okay, Josh. Well, if you need anything else, let me know. And thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. I'll definitely give you a call once we get something rolling. All right.
Okay. Good luck with the label. Bye-bye.